I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to slow my racing heart. My grandson's voice echoed in my head, the words he'd whispered to me 3 days ago while his father wasn't looking. "Grandma, don't go on the boat with Dad. I heard him tell someone you won't come back." It was a sunny afternoon in April, 28 years ago, but I can still feel the chill that ran through my bones when that 7-year-old boy grabbed my wrist with his small fingers and looked at me with eyes too serious for his age. I was 62 then, recently widowed, and my son-in-law had become unusually attentive since my husband's passing. I thought he was being kind. I was wrong. "Ethan, honey, what do you mean?" I'd tried to keep my voice light, but my hand trembled as I set down my coffee cup. We were in my kitchen in my Cape Cod house in Massachusetts, the one my late husband Richard and I had bought 35 years earlier, the one that was now worth nearly $2 million, the one my daughter Catherine had grown up in. "Dad's been talking on his secret phone," Ethan continued, his voice barely above a whisper, "the one he keeps in his toolbox in the garage. He said your name, and then he said something about making it look like an accident on the water. He said the boat, the insurance, and something about finally being done with the old problem." My blood ran cold. The old problem, is that what I was to my son-in-law? A problem to be solved? "When did you hear this, sweetheart?" I managed to ask. "Last night. I went to get my baseball glove from the garage and Dad was in there. He didn't see me. He was laughing with someone on the phone. A lady. He called her baby. I should have called the police right then. Should have confronted my daughter. But you don't want to believe that the man your only child married, the father of your grandchildren, wants you dead. So instead, I asked Ethan if he could show me what he'd heard. "Show me like a movie," I said. "Can you draw it for me?" He nodded solemnly and spent the next hour at my kitchen table with crayons and paper while I pretended to read a magazine. What he produced made my hands shake so badly I had to grip the table edge. There was a drawing of his father on a phone with a heart next to another woman, labeled Daddy's Other Lady. Another showed a boat with 2 stick figures, one pushing the other into blue waves. The word accident was written in his careful 2nd-grade letters, copied exactly as he'd heard it. There was even a drawing of a house I didn't recognize with Daddy's other house written beneath it. But the last drawing was what stopped my heart entirely. It showed me, gray hair and all, with X's for eyes, floating in water. Below it, Ethan had written, "Grandma gone, and sorry." He'd drawn my death. This beautiful, innocent 7-year-old had heard his own father planning my murder and had processed it the only way he knew how. I pulled him into my arms, breathing in the smell of grass and childhood, and made a decision. I would not let this man destroy my family. I would not become a victim. And I would not let my grandson grow up with a murderer for a father and the weight of this secret crushing his soul. That night, I called my younger brother Thomas. He'd retired from the FBI 2 years earlier after 30 years as a special agent. He'd never liked my son-in-law Daniel. "Too smooth," he always said, "charming like a con man. Nobody's that perfect without hiding something ugly." "Thomas, I need you to come to Massachusetts," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Something's very wrong with Daniel, and I need your help to prove it." He was on a plane from Virginia by morning. Over the next 4 days, Thomas and I became detectives. We worked while Daniel was at his accounting firm, and Catherine was busy with her real estate business. What we uncovered made me sick to my stomach. The first discovery was the other woman. Her name was Monica Reyes, 29 years old, a paralegal at a firm in Connecticut. Thomas found her through the burner phone's records, which he'd managed to access through some old contacts. They'd been seeing each other for 3 years. 3 years of lies, of weekend business trips that were actually romantic getaways, of late nights at the office that were spent in her apartment. But it got worse. Thomas dug into Daniel's finances and found a web of debt I never knew existed. Despite his successful career, despite their beautiful house in Newton, despite the country club membership and the private school tuition, Daniel was drowning. He'd lost over $400,000 in bad investments he'd hidden from Catherine. He'd taken out loans using their house as collateral. He was 3 months behind on payments. And then there was the insurance policy. "Taken out 8 months ago," Thomas said grimly, sliding a document across my kitchen table. $1.5 million on your life, Jessica. Daniel is listed as the beneficiary, not Catherine. How is that possible? My voice cracked. I didn't sign anything. Thomas's jaw tightened. The signature is forged. Not well, either. He was counting on never having to prove it was legitimate because you'd be dead. I felt like I was falling, even though I was sitting down. My son-in-law hadn't just been planning to kill me. He'd been planning it for months, maybe longer, building the paperwork, the alibi, the opportunity. There's more, Thomas said quietly. Monica is pregnant, due in 5 months. She's been pressuring him to leave Catherine, and he's been promising her he will just as soon as he gets the money situation sorted out. The money situation. My life reduced to a financial problem to be eliminated. What about the boat? I asked. He's been pushing me to go fishing with him next weekend. Said it would be good for me to get out on the water, that Richard would have wanted me to enjoy the boat we bought together. Thomas nodded slowly. The boat is registered in Daniel's name now. Did you know that? I blinked. What? No. Richard left it to Catherine in his will. Somehow, the registration was transferred 6 months ago, right around when the insurance policy was taken out. Thomas pulled out another paper, and I found this in his search history. He's been researching how long it takes for a body to be found in the Atlantic, what causes boats to capsize, how to disable emergency equipment without it looking tampered with. I closed my eyes. Daniel wasn't just a cheater and a liar. He was a cold, calculating would-be murderer who had spent months planning every detail. We need to catch him in the act, I said finally. My voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded like steel. If we go to the police now, he'll deny everything. The forged signature might not hold up. He'll claim the searches were research for a book or curiosity. He'll explain away Monica as a mistake he was ending. And then he'll know we're onto him. And he'll either disappear or try again when we're not watching. Thomas stared at me. Jessica, what you're suggesting is incredibly dangerous. I looked at the drawings, still spread across my table. My grandson's nightmares rendered in crayon. This child had found the courage to warn me. The least I could do was find the courage to stop his father. I'm 62 years old, I said. I've buried my husband, raised my daughter, built a life I'm proud of. I'm not going to let some greedy, heartless man take what's left of it. And I'm not going to let Ethan grow up wondering if he could have saved his grandmother if only someone had listened to him. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, we do this together, and we do it right. The plan came together over the next 2 days. Thomas called in favors from his former colleagues. We got a waterproof wire that could withstand submersion. We arranged for Coast Guard officers to be positioned nearby, disguised as recreational boaters. We set up a GPS tracker on Daniel's car and phone. We prepared for every contingency we could imagine. I also spent an afternoon at the YMCA with a retired Navy officer Thomas knew, relearning how to swim, practicing holding my breath, learning how to survive in cold water. Richard and I had bought that boat 15 years ago, but I'd never been a confident swimmer. Daniel knew that. He was counting on it. The day before the fishing trip, Daniel stopped by my house with flowers. For his favorite mother-in-law, he said with that perfect smile. I made myself smile back, accept the flowers, offer him coffee. We sat in my living room, and he talked about how much he missed Richard, how worried he was about me being alone in this big house, how the ocean air would be good for my grief. Catherine says you've been having trouble sleeping, he said, his voice dripping with concern. Maybe the fresh air will help. I'm so glad you agreed to come out on the boat with me. I searched his face for any sign of the monster beneath, any flicker of guilt, of hesitation, of humanity. I saw nothing but practiced warmth. You've been so thoughtful since Richard passed, I said. Truly. Your family. He reached over and squeezed my hand. Family takes care of each other. I managed not to flinch. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Richard's old chair, looking at our wedding photo, talking to him in my mind. I'm going to finish this, I told him. For Ethan, for Catherine, for us. This man wormed his way into our family, and I'm going to cut him out before he destroys everything we built. The morning of the fishing trip dawned gray and cool, typical April weather on the Massachusetts coast. Thomas had positioned himself in a rental boat half a mile away, watching through binoculars. 2 Coast Guard officers were in another boat nearby, posing as a couple on an early morning excursion. I had the wire taped to my chest beneath 3 layers of clothing, thin enough to be undetectable but sensitive enough to catch a whisper. Daniel picked me up at 7. He was cheerful, talkative, carrying a thermos of coffee and a bag of muffins from my favorite bakery. So thoughtful, so attentive, so ready to kill me. The drive to the marina took 40 minutes. He filled the silence with small talk about Ethan's baseball season, about Catherine's latest real estate deal, about a vacation they were planning for the summer, a vacation I was never supposed to see. The boat was a 26-foot fishing vessel named the Catherine Rose, after my daughter. Richard had surprised her with it on her 30th birthday. Now it was registered to the man who wanted to use it as my coffin. We motored out of the harbor into open water. The ocean was calm, just a gentle swell, nothing that would capsize a boat on its own. Daniel anchored us about 2 miles offshore, far enough that we were alone, close enough that my body would eventually wash up. "Beautiful day for it," he said, and I heard the double meaning beneath his casual tone. I made myself nod, smile, accept the fishing rod he handed me. We cast our lines and sat in silence for a while. I could feel the wire against my skin, a thin line of hope and technology. After 20 minutes, Daniel put down his rod. "Jessica, there's something I need to talk to you about." His voice had shifted, become more serious. "What is it, dear?" He turned to face me fully. "I've been thinking about your situation. This big house, all alone, Richard's estate still going through probate. It's a lot for anyone to handle." "I'm managing," I said carefully. "But are you?" He leaned forward. "Catherine worries about you. I worry about you. Maybe it's time to think about simplifying things, selling the house, moving somewhere smaller, easier to maintain." I felt cold anger bloom in my chest. He wasn't just planning to kill me. He was laying groundwork, creating a narrative. The grieving widow, overwhelmed, not thinking clearly. Maybe if I refused to sell the house before my accident, he could convince Catherine to sell it after. Another asset to fund his debts and his secret life. "I appreciate the concern," I said, "but I'm not ready to leave my home." Something flickered in his eyes. Frustration? Impatience? It was gone in an instant, replaced by that smooth concern. "Of course. Just something to think about." He stood up, stretched. "I'm going to check the anchor. We've drifted a bit." He moved to the front of the boat, and I saw his hand reach into his pocket. When he turned back, he was holding something small and dark. "Jessica," he said, his voice suddenly flat and cold. "I need you to come here for a moment." The wire was recording, the Coast Guard was listening, Thomas was watching, but standing there on that boat with a man who wanted me dead, I felt completely alone. "What's in your hand, Daniel?" He didn't answer immediately, just walked toward me slowly, deliberately. His eyes had changed, the warmth was gone. What I saw now was cold calculation, annoyance, the look of a man dealing with a task he found unpleasant but necessary. "You know," he said conversationally, "I really did hope you'd make this easier. Sell the house, sign over the accounts, fade away quietly into some retirement home. But you're stubborn." Richard was the same way. My blood turned to ice. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Catherine deserves her inheritance now, not in 10 or 20 years when you finally die of old age. Not after you've spent it all on cruises and medical bills and whatever else old women waste money on." He was close now, close enough that I could see the object in his hand was a syringe. "I'm saying that my children deserve a better life than I can give them right now. And Monica deserves the life I promised her. Monica." I kept my voice steady. "The paralegal in Connecticut?" His eyes widened slightly, the first crack in his composure. "How do you know about Monica?" "I know everything, Daniel. The insurance policy you forged my name on, the debt you're hiding from Catherine, the other life you've been living for 3 years. I know it all." For a moment, he just stared at me. Then his face hardened into something ugly and desperate. "Then you know why I have to do this." He lunged. But I was ready. Thomas had trained me, drilled me, prepared me for this moment. I dropped low, grabbed the fishing rod at my feet, and swung it hard across his knees. He stumbled, cursing, and I scrambled backward toward the stern. "Coast Guard, this is an emergency," I shouted, knowing the wire would carry my voice. "Suspect is attempting assault." "You're wearing a wire?" Daniel's face contorted with rage. "You set me up? You tried to kill me." He came at me again, and this time I had nowhere to go. The railing was at my back, the cold Atlantic below. He grabbed my shoulders, and I felt myself tipping backward. In that moment, I did something he never expected. Instead of fighting his push, I grabbed his shirt and pulled him with me. We hit the water together. The cold was shocking, brutal, like being stabbed by 1,000 needles. But I'd prepared for this. Hold breath, don't panic, swim away from the boat. I kicked hard, putting distance between us, surfacing 10 feet away. Daniel came up sputtering, thrashing. For all his planning, he'd never considered that I might pull him in too. He was a weak swimmer, I remembered suddenly. Catherine had mentioned it once, how he never went in the pool with the kids. Help! He was panicking now. The predator suddenly prey. Jessica, help me! The Coast Guard boats were already converging, sirens wailing. Thomas's rental was speeding toward us. I treaded water, watching my son-in-law flail. For a moment, I considered letting the ocean have him. It would be justice. It would be easy. No one would blame a 62-year-old woman for failing to save the man who'd tried to murder her. But I thought of Ethan, of the boy who would have to live with whatever happened here. And I knew that if I let his father drown, I'd be putting a different kind of weight on his small shoulders. I swam toward Daniel, grabbed his collar, and pulled his head above water. Stop fighting me, I commanded. Lie on your back and float. I've got you. He was too panicked to do anything but obey. I held him up until the Coast Guard reached us, until strong hands pulled us both from the water, until we were wrapped in blankets on the deck of the rescue boat. Daniel tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, a joke that got out of hand. His mother-in-law had fallen overboard and he'd jumped in to save her, but the wire had caught everything. His confession about Catherine's inheritance. His admission about Monica. His plan articulated in his own voice. Thomas met us at the dock with local police. I watched them handcuff Daniel, watched his face cycle through denial, then rage, then something that might have been fear. You ruined everything, he spat at me as they led him away. Everything I worked for. You worked to kill me, I replied. You failed. Catherine arrived an hour later, bewildered and terrified. Thomas and I sat with her in the harbor master's office and told her everything. Showed her the evidence. Played her portions of the recording. I've never seen my daughter's heart break before. It's not something any mother should witness. She crumbled, sobbed, raged, denied, then finally, horribly, accepted. The children, she whispered. How do I tell the children? I held her hand. We tell them the truth. Age appropriate, but the truth. They're stronger than we think. Ethan especially. She looked at me then with something like horror. Ethan, did he know? Is that why he's been having nightmares? He's the one who saved my life, I said gently. He heard Daniel on the phone and he warned me. He drew pictures of what he'd heard. Without your son, I'd be dead. Catherine wept harder then, grief and gratitude tangled together. The trial took 7 months. Daniel's lawyers tried everything, claimed I'd entrapped him, that I'd manipulated the situation, that I'd pulled him into the water in an attempt to murder him. But Ethan's drawings, dated weeks before the incident, proved I'd had warning. The forged insurance documents proved premeditation. Monica's testimony, when she finally agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity, proved he'd been planning this for nearly a year. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty of attempted murder, guilty of insurance fraud, guilty of forgery, 15 years in prison. Monica lost the baby 2 months after Daniel's arrest. Stress, the doctors said. She moved back to Puerto Rico where her family lived, and I never heard about her again. Catherine divorced Daniel while he was awaiting trial, took back her maiden name, had the children's names legally changed. She sold the house in Newton and moved with Ethan and his younger sister Emma into the Cape Cod house with me. For a year, we were 3 generations of women and 1 brave boy, healing together in the house where I'd raised Catherine, where she'd taken her first steps, where Richard and I had built a life. Ethan started therapy. At first, he wouldn't talk about what he'd heard, what he'd drawn, what had almost happened to his grandmother because of his father. But slowly, with help, he processed it. He processed the grief of losing the father he thought he knew, the guilt of being the one to expose him, the fear that he'd somehow caused all of it. "You didn't cause anything," I told him one evening when he was 10. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset over the water. "Your father made his choices long before you were born. All you did was tell the truth. That's the bravest thing anyone can do." He leaned against me, still small enough to fit under my arm. "Grandma? Do bad guys ever become good guys?" I thought about Daniel, sitting in his prison cell. Thought about whether people could change, truly change, at their core. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know that you get to choose who you become. Every single day, you get to make that choice. And so far, you've chosen to be brave and honest and good." He nodded, seeming to accept this. "When I grow up, I want to help people, like Uncle Thomas does, like you did." My heart swelled. "Then you will, sweetheart. I have no doubt." Catherine eventually remarried, a gentle high school history teacher named Robert, who'd never once lied about anything more serious than whether he'd finished the last of the ice cream. They moved to a house nearby, close enough that Ethan and Emma could walk to my place after school. Robert adopted both children with their blessing. Daniel didn't contest it. I don't know if that was decency or strategy or simply defeat. Daniel was released on parole 3 years ago, after serving 12 years. I received notification as his victim. He's required to stay in Minnesota now, where his elderly parents live. He's forbidden from contacting any of us. I hear through the legal grapevine that he works at a hardware store, lives in a small apartment, and has never married again. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about that day on the boat, about how close he came to getting away with it, about the 7-year-old boy who ruined his perfect plan with crayon drawings and careful attention to whispered phone calls. I hope he does. I hope it keeps him awake at night, because 28 years later, I'm still here. I'm 90 years old now, living in the same Cape Cod house, though with a live-in nurse to help with the daily things that have gotten harder. Ethan visits every Sunday with his wife and their twin daughters. He became an FBI agent, like Thomas, specializing in financial crimes. He says it started that summer, that understanding that sometimes the most dangerous predators look like the people you trust most. Emma is a social worker, helping children in difficult family situations. Catherine retired last year and spends her time between my house and volunteering at a domestic violence shelter. Robert still brings me fresh tomatoes from his garden every Saturday. We're a family that was almost destroyed by a man who saw us as obstacles to his desires. Instead, we destroyed him. Not with violence, not with revenge, but with truth and courage, and the willingness of a 7-year-old boy to speak up about something that terrified him. If you're listening to this and something feels wrong in your life, trust that feeling. If someone you love tells you something frightening about someone else you love, listen, really listen. Children see what adults miss. They notice patterns we explain away, inconsistencies we ignore, dangers we refuse to acknowledge. Ethan noticed his father's secret phone. Noticed the way he talked differently when he thought no one was listening. Noticed something wrong in our family that the adults were too blind or too trusting to see. I almost dismissed it. Almost told him he was imagining things, misunderstanding adult conversations, being dramatic. Thank God I asked him to draw what he'd heard instead. Thank God I took those drawings to my brother. Thank God I found the courage to face a monster rather than pretend he didn't exist. It saved my life. It saved my daughter's future. It probably saved Ethan and Emma from a father who would have eventually destroyed them too, one way or another. And if you're in danger right now, if something feels wrong in your family, if a child is trying to tell you something terrifying about someone you love, believe them, get help, get safe, get out. You're stronger than you know, smarter than they expect, and you deserve better than a love that might kill you. Trust yourself. Trust your children. Trust that voice inside that says something's wrong. It's usually right.